Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of In My Plant-Based Kitchen. I am Emma, and I am a registered holistic nutritionist and a certified plant-based chef. And it is Veganuary, and this month I have decided to put together some resources, some tips, some inspiration, information, recipes, etc., to support those of you who might be um, looking up to transition to a whole foods plant-based way of eating wherever you are along your journey. Like I said, it's Veganuary, the month when there's lots of encouragement and fresh start, looking to encourage people to try vegetarianism or veganism out. And so on that note, I thought I would help to share some of the experiences and information that I have about to help people along their way. So there are, of course, many reasons to make this change for the planet. It's better for the planet. It is so much more sustainable than animal-based diet. It is, of course, kinder to animals because there are no animals involved. It is great for your health as long as you do it the right way. So there are many, many benefits. And I did a video a couple of weeks ago about my why. And I think that if you are looking to make a sustainable and long-lasting change is a really, really important part of this process to figure out. I mean, you probably don't have to figure it out. It's probably something that's coming to you, that's or you're having a health issue and you've decided to try this, or you have become interested in the reasons to do it for compassion or for the planet. But knowing what your why is and really exploring that and thinking about it, I think really helps to make a difference when you get to the time that you run into some barriers, because almost guaranteed you will. Our world is still not you turn on the TV and you see all kinds of advertisements for unhealthy animal-based foods. You drive down the highway and you see billboards, and it's online and it's on social media and so on, so on. So it's really great to really know why you're doing this and be able to draw on that when you run into some hard, sometimes that can be challenging. Over the years, I've worked with a lot of people who have wanted to transition to a healthier plant-based diet, or sort of at various stages of their journeys. Really, I've worked with people who are sort of eating the standard American diet and want to either become vegetarian or vegan and are looking for information about that. Maybe their kids are doing it and they want more information about that, how to do it safely. Or maybe they're just looking to bring more healthy plant foods into their life and sort of crowd out some of those unhealthier animal products or processed foods. I've also worked with vegetarians looking to transition to veganism. I've also worked with vegans looking to transition to a healthier vegan diet, because as I talked about in my resources video yesterday, it is not necessarily the same thing. And I think in order to be sustainable, it's really important that you're doing this in a healthy way. So again, this month, I'm just going to be sharing some of the tips and ideas and strategies that I've shared with those people over the years, in the hopes of inspiring you and aiming you with more information and resources to make your journey successful, whatever that looks like for you. So there are three things I want to encourage you or invite you to think about as we start this conversation. The first one is that it really is important to do this in a healthy way. I talked about this in my own vegan story journey, my video. I did not do it in a healthy way, and that almost stopped. That could have definitely been a stopping point for me, thinking that I couldn't be a healthy vegan. So it is really, really important that whether you're doing it for yourself and whatever reason you're doing it for, that you do it in a way that you can sustain good health over a long period of time or for the rest of your life. So I'd encourage you not to just replace animal products with the processed plant products that are out there these days. It is so easy to do that because on the one hand, it's wonderful. We have all kinds of delicious, I call them transition foods or treat foods, the plant-based burgers, the plant-based sausages, the plant-based lunch meats, cheeses, ice creams, those types of things. You can pretty much replace anything with tasty plant-based alternatives these days. But if you are transitioning and you just replace the animal products with those processed plant products, I think you're really doing yourself a disservice. And it's likely that that won't be sustainable for you health-wise over the long term, because many of those products, some are better than others, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying that you should never use them, but I like to call them transition foods because they're very helpful in the transition. But I'd really encourage you at the same time to be exploring with whole foods, plant-based recipes and actual plants, because really when it comes to the health benefits of this and really the planetary benefits, those whole foods, these foods that we recognize as food that are not found in the packaged food aisle, that are found in the vegetable and fruit aisle, the beans and legumes, the grains, the whole grains, all of these unprocessed foods are the ones that are going to really help to make you as healthy as you possibly can be, keep you at a good weight, prevent a lot of chronic diseases that are caused by what we eat or don't eat. And yeah, it just really is the most sustainable and the best way to do this. So I'm not saying that you have to do it perfectly, which is another point I want to talk about in a sec, but it's really important to just try to keep that in mind as you're starting the journey, and just start to try to experiment with some of those recipes and foods, and there are lots of them out there, and they're going to be delicious as well. Educate yourself, and I've talked about this quite a bit in the last couple of videos. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself the time that you need to transition in a healthful way, and make it enjoyable. Make it a fun process of discovery. In my classes, I can't count the number of people who went through my classes and who had been cooking and had been marvelous cooks over the years with an animal-based diet. And they discovered a love of vegetables again, because they're just thinking about them in a different way, thinking about them as the center of the plate, thinking about plant foods as the main attraction instead of the side. So it can be a very exciting process and fun rediscovery if you are adept, especially if you're adept and you love cooking. It's a really fun thing. And then the third point is progress over perfection. I think this is really, really important for almost all of us. I would say maybe the 1% that just go and do it perfectly right from the get-go because they just don't see any other option. But almost all of us, it's really, really important to celebrate your wins as you go. Don't feel like you have to be perfect ever. It's a journey, and if you treat it that way and you don't beat yourself up if you slip or if something happens and that you weren't anticipating, this doesn't have to happen overnight. And so this brings me to the topic for today's video, which is transition approaches. Some people, as I said, do it all at once, but that isn't it. And I'm not saying it never works, but often it is a really difficult way to do things. This is how I did. I pretty much did it like that. I learned about animal factory farming, and I decided I didn't want to be part of that. And so I did what in my mind was a complete, I'm not eating animal product, or I'm not eating meat anymore, because I didn't realize the whole dairy thing, or the cruelty of the dairy industry. So, but as I mentioned, I got really sick. And it took me time. It took me a lot of research to learn how to do it in a way that was healthy. It was a very different way of eating, and it is for most people. So I really think that doing it over time, giving yourself, like I said, the space and time and energy to learn different recipes, to find the resources you need, to find the information you need, to learn about the differences in this way of cooking is a really, really important thing to do to make it sustainable over time. And so what that transition approach is, again, there of course are many, many different ways to do that. One thing that I've seen people do is to just say, okay, one day a week, we're going to just experiment with meals that don't contain animal products. And that could be one day and one way. And then once you got one day down, you go to 2 days, 3 days, etc. Some people say, okay, well, I'm not going to eat animal products on the weekend, or I'm not going to eat animal products during the week. So there are those types of ways. But one of the ways that I see working the best, and I really like this approach, is the meal by meal approach. And so this strategy is all about taking one meal at a time. So you could choose whichever meal you want. But I'm going to talk about starting with breakfast. You decide to make your breakfast vegan. And this is an easy one because unless you're eating bacon and eggs, lots of times breakfast is already well along the path to being plant-based. So it's a very easy one. You master breakfast, you get comfortable with it, you try some new recipes. And once you're comfortable with that, then you go on to lunch, and then you go on to dinner, and then you go, and maybe snacks and desserts and things like that along the way. And before you know it, you're eating more and more and more plant-based foods, crowding out the crap, the unhealthier processed and animal products with healthier plant foods. And I find it's a strategy that works really well for a lot of people. So each week this month, I'm going to be talking about a different meal. And I'm going to demonstrate one of the meals that I eat a lot in my house that are sort of go-tos for me. And I'm going to be answering some of the questions that have come in, or requests that have come in for different types of recipes. And I'll provide the recipe or a template for this meal, and hopefully I'll inspire you to try it. So we're going to start with breakfast. And before we get to the recipe part, it won't be much longer. I really want to talk about why breakfast is so important. This is something that most of us have heard from our mothers or fathers, or, grandmothers or whoever. Starting your breakfast day with breakfast is truly a really important thing to do for your health. And one of the most important reasons for that is that it sets you up for steady energy through the day, making you calm, making you focused, allowing you the fuel you need to get through your day in a really good, healthy way. Our bodies are actually designed to take calories in earlier in the day. So there has been some really fascinating research that I'm going to link to some more information about in the show notes that shows that our body uses calories very differently through the day. So we can eat this very same meal at 8 a.m. as we do at 8 p.m. And in the morning, our body uses the calories from that meal for energy, as opposed to at night, it'll store about 50% of those calories as fat, because our circadian rhythm is telling our body, well, we're just about to go to sleep. We don't need all that energy, so store it as fat. So it's a very interesting thing that sort of really lends itself to the argument of eating your bigger meals earlier in the day and not eating too late at night. And there's a whole lot of, fasting and intermittent fasting information out there about that type of thing now. But I just thought that was a very interesting point to bring, because I still know there are still a lot of people who say, oh, I don't eat breakfast. I'm too busy for breakfast. I can't, I don't like eating breakfast. I think if there's one thing that you can do to get on a healthy journey, starting out with just trying to include breakfast, a healthy breakfast every morning is a really, really good one. Okay, so what we are making today is loaded savory oats, and this is based on a recipe from She Glows from Angela Liddon. I loved this idea when I came across it because I prefer savory things in the morning to sweet things. And oatmeal to me has always been, when I was growing up, it was oatmeal with maybe some brown sugar on it or something like that. Oatmeal to me has always been sweeter. And I do like sweeter oatmeal sometimes. And of course, and I'll talk a little bit about how to do this bowl in a sweet and healthy way. Getting rid of the brown sugar and maybe using some other healthier things in it. But I wanted to show this because I think it's very different. It's very a different concept for a lot of people. And again, I've taught this type of, it's more, I use it more as a template, and I'll explain that as I go along. So what we've got in this recipe is, we're going to start with 1/3 cup of rolled oats. I'm going to turn my pan on here. So we've got 1/3 cup of rolled oats. You can use steel cut oats, which are less processed and would be even better. I personally just really like the texture of the rolled oats, and they are still in a fairly whole form, so they're perfectly acceptable to use. If you do use steel cut oats, I would recommend either soaking them a little bit ahead of time or giving them a bit longer to cook. This recipe with the rolled oats takes about 8 minutes to cook. So we're going to put that in. We're also going to include 1/4 cup of red lentils. And red lentils, of course, legume family, are loaded with fiber, antioxidants, protein. It's a great way to get beans into your day if you are challenged to, you are trying to find more ways to get beans into your diet, beans and legumes. So I wanted to get those into the pot. We're going to bring those to a boil. We can't see them, but I put 1 3/4 cups of vegetable stock in as well. I'm going to throw in a little bit of rosemary from my garden, just a sprig of rosemary, which I'll take out after. It's going to just infuse with a bit of a background flavor. You could really use any fresh herbs, chives, cilantro, of course, parsley, anything like that would also be great. Just to go back to the actual nutrition around oats, they are, of course, a very popular breakfast food, and there's good reason for that. They are great for our heart. They're great for our skin. They are great for our guts. They're full of fiber. They've got lots of manganese and magnesium and iron. So they are really loaded with all kinds of great nutrients that will set us up for a good day. And they help to satiate us. They help us to feel full. Because of their soluble fiber, they're really, really helpful for our gut health, which also, of course, affects our brain health and so on. So those are some of the reasons to include oats in your morning meal for sure. And then the red lentils, again, like I said, this is a great way to get some beans or some legumes into your day, including more beans and legumes in our diets. For most of us in North America who are not eating them on a regular basis is one of the best things we can do for our health, because they're so loaded with protein. They're a great source of plant-based protein. They're a great source of fiber. And of course, they've got all kinds of minerals and vitamins as well. Lots of iron, lots of calcium. Usually red lentils in particular are a great source of helpful antioxidants. So all good things. So we're just letting that simmer away. And we're going to also add some allium vegetables, about 1 clove of garlic, 1 to 2, depending on how much you like. If you don't love garlic, then just put in a little bit. I have a little bit of a blemish on that one. I'm going to put in 2 because these are really small. And I love garlic. This recipe makes 2 servings, by the way. So I usually make, my husband doesn't love the savory oats. He'd prefer to have the ones with like a sweeter oat bowl. So I tend to make this and I put half of it into the fridge for the next day. So this is one that you can definitely heat up again the next day. So I'm just, I mince up my garlic. So it's nice because you can cook this ahead and reheat it if you're in a, if you're in a place where you don't have a lot of time in the morning, which a lot of us are. So it's a good thing to know to cook ahead. So the next thing is onion. And I just take a small wedge of onion. This is a red onion. I just use whatever onions I've got. Sometimes I use shallots or green onions or yellow onions, whatever I've got, I use. And you're looking for, about 1/4 cup or so. But again, it's just really to preference. I tend to go for a wedge about this size. And then you're just going to want to mince that up as well. Allium vegetables are very, very helpful for keeping your immune system functioning properly. And of course, adding a ton of flavor. So it's not just about the health benefits. It's also about making this taste great and be a, really, it's not just about feeling like you're doing yourself a big sacrifice. It's also about eating really yummy food. So I'm just going to keep stirring that. It's come to a boil now, so I'm gonna turn it down just a tad so it doesn't start to stick in the bottom, and I'll just stir it once in a while. And then I'm gonna let that percolate for about 8 minutes. Actually, I have a couple more things to add. One of them is about 1/8 teaspoon of turmeric. Turmeric is, of course, a wonderful anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-rich spice that it's great to get into your diet every single day you can. So what I really like to do with my breakfast is try to get as many of those really nutrient-dense things into my diet in the morning. It's kind of like going to the gym in the morning. You get it done, right? And then you're good for the day. Not to say that the rest of your meals can not, but if you're getting lots of nutrition into your morning. And then you're going to want a little bit of black pepper as well to activate that curcumin with the turmeric. If you're not already used to eating a lot of turmeric, go easy on it because it does have a bit of a bitter flavor. So just put a pinch in and then add more as you like it, up to about 1/8 teaspoon or so, and then about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. You can add a little bit of salt to taste if you like. My vegetable stock is salted, so I didn't add any extra salt. And then that really is it. I'm going to just let that percolate, turn it down a little bit again for about 8 minutes until it just all sort of absorbs the water and it's all ready to go. And then what I'm going to do is load it up. And this is the fun part. And this is, so actually first, before I go on, let me talk about some of the ways that you can custom or change this up. So red lentils are really great for the beans to use in this because they cook so quickly. You could use other lentils. Say you want to use brown lentils or green lentils and steel cut oats, then that would actually work really well because they both need to cook for a little bit longer. So you just cook that for say maybe 15-20 minutes. But if you want to use the rolled oats, The red lentils go really nicely. You could also use quinoa and cook that for about 15 minutes. And red lentils work really well with that. Or what I do is I'll often have beans that I've cooked ahead of time in my fridge, chickpeas or white beans or black beans, and I'll make the grain, add the cooked beans, and just heat them up. And that works really, really well too. So a savory oat bowl just with a base of grains and beans, and then you load it up with whatever else you like. And again, similar to the video that I did about the breakfast bowls or the dinner bowls, this is really just a template. So you're starting out with a grain, you're adding a bean, you're adding your greens, and then you customize it to the flavors that you like. So today, I'm going to add, and I usually do add, to be honest, I'm not super, I tend to make this way a lot because I really like it. I'm going to add some avocado, some fresh avocado, which is just a really nice source of healthy fat. Avocados are also incredibly high in fiber, so another great source of fiber to add to this. I'm going to add some of my homemade salsa and a little bit of my homemade sauerkraut. So that's a really nice way to get a little bit of sauerkraut into your day. And then I usually add some tomatoes or something crunchy, so maybe some cucumbers or some shredded carrots that are fresh. And it just, all of this comes together because this is very soft, of course. And that's something that a lot of people don't like about, in my experience, I've heard, don't like oatmeal because it's mushy and this and that. If that's the case for you, I have a couple of suggestions. One is to try the steel cut oats because they're chewier. And you might like that. I know my husband, like I said, really doesn't like the rolled oats. He loves the steel cut oats. So that's one thing to try. The other thing is to try adding some fresh, crunchy things to the bowl so that you've got a variety of textures. And that really can help to, it really can help to add diversity. It adds color. It looks prettier. It tastes better. So that's another really nice thing to do. And then I'm also going to serve it up with my greens, loaded up with my greens. You can add a little bit of raw allium if you like. So maybe some chives or some green onions, or a little bit of chopped red onion. I think I'll do that today, actually. And the other thing, sometimes I like to add hummus. You can see the texture now it's still a little bit, still needs a few more minutes, but we're getting there. So really, whatever you've got in your fridge, it's so versatile. It's just about that base of a grain and a bean of some kind, a legume of some kind, and then making it your own. All right. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is tips for making breakfast easier. So if you are thinking about doing this, okay, let's start with breakfast. I'm going to make my breakfast plant-based every day this week. What are some other ideas or recipes that you might like? Another one that I really love, and this is actually a question that came in, was somebody who asking for me to talk about more oat recipes. So this is one, a sweet oatmeal bowl might look like some regular oats. You might even try mashing in a couple of tablespoons of white beans, because again, when it's all mashed up together, you're not going to be able to taste them. And it's a great way to get those beans in to your meal, even if it's a sweet bowl. So you've got your oats and maybe your beans. You put on a little bit of soy milk or maybe some cashew cream. And I can share a recipe link for that below. Load it up with berries. And actually, the other thing I'm going to throw on today is some flaxseed, some ground flaxseed, because flaxseed, sweet or savory, is a great thing to add in the morning as well. Super high in fiber. It's got lignans, which is helpful for lowering cholesterol. It's great for heart health. So flaxseed is another great thing to add to your morning bowl. What was the other thing I was going to say? So yeah, nuts and seeds. any kind of fruit that you like. I love adding pears or apples usually to mine, cinnamon, some spices, nutmeg, or things like that that you like to add. That's pretty standard. I don't think I'm shocking anybody with those ideas, except maybe the beans. And then the other thing is just trying some overnight oats. If you haven't tried overnight oats, the idea is, and truth be told, I make overnight oats all the time, but I don't leave them overnight. I start them out in the morning. I work at home, so I will come up before I go for my walk. I'll put my oats together with some oat milk and some chia seed. And then by the time I come home, it's set up enough that I can pour it into a bowl, add some pears and some frozen blueberries, and I am all good to go. And I love that breakfast, and a little bit of peanut butter. It's one of my favorites. So that's another thing, overnight oats. And again, you just make it your own with whatever nuts, seeds, plant-based berries, or whatever you can think to add. Bulk cooking and warming your grains and your beans and your greens is just a really easy way to set yourself up for breakfast success in the morning. So if you're really busy, you've got a really busy job, you'd think, oh, this is really nice, but I don't have time to do this all in the morning. You don't have to. You can do some bulk cooking on the weekend if you've got an Instant Pot, or some kind of pressure cooker, or open a can of beans too. You don't have to do everything from scratch, but cook yourself up some brown rice, cook yourself up some quinoa, cook yourself up even some oatmeal, put it in the fridge, and then it's ready to go. You can just throw it all together in the morning, even take it with you in a takeout container, and off you go. What else? Granola, making granola ahead, making it yourself. Granola, packaged granola that comes from the store is often just loaded with sugar. So there are so many great recipes, great ways to make granola healthier on your own at home. I have a recipe that I will share the link to as well. You could serve it up with plant-based yogurt or cashew cream, and a bunch, again, just loaded up with berries, and you've got yourself a delicious breakfast. Smoothies, adding a ton of great ingredients, chia seeds, flax seeds, greens, frozen fruit, and maybe some cucumbers or frozen vegetables as well. Even adding it to a smoothie bowl with some granola, of your homemade granola on top. Again, you're talking about a really nice breakfast for yourself. And then if you are in a super big rush and all you have is some whole grain toast and some avocado, then you can make yourself some avocado toast, mash in some chickpeas with that, sprinkle a little bit of lime and just a touch of salt, and you will, again, just a really tasty, fast breakfast for yourself. So part of it is about having the right things in your pantry, thinking about what the types of things that you might like to have for breakfast, sourcing some of those recipes, making some stuff ahead in order to set yourself up for success. And I'm someone, I don't like eating as soon as I get up. I used to be in the no breakfast camp for a long time until I realized that I was really doing myself a disservice not eating breakfast. So I usually get up, I go for a walk with my sister, I come home, and then I have breakfast. So I've been up for a couple of hours. My digestive system is ready to go. And so if you are someone who gets up and goes to work and doesn't like to eat breakfast, then take it with you. Just make it ahead and take it with you and eat it when you're ready. I think that is all I've got for you in terms of the information today. This is ready. What perfect timing. So I'm going to turn that off. And let's make our breakfast bowl. So I've got a nice wide bowl here. I really like using a wide bowl because it's nice for presentation purposes. I'm going to open up. Oh, I'm so sad to be opening up a box of greens. Bring on spring and all our local greens. So I've got just some mixed greens there. Again, super nutrient dense food that it's really nice to get into your morning meal. And I've got my little piece of rosemary there. I'm going to pull that out because I don't really want that as a big twig in my breakfast. It's got a really nice color because of the turmeric. And then, and this is the consistency that I prefer. You can cook it more or less depending on what you like, but everything's nice and soft and mashed together at this point. I'm going to add myself some salsa on the side. And again, when you're doing this, especially if you're trying to entice somebody else with it, great to think about color. We eat with our eyes first, and color represents nutrients. Always remember that. So you're thinking about, oh, what colors can I add? If I had some carrot, I would add carrot because I don't have any orange here, but I don't have any carrot today. So I am going to add my pepper, my fresh, crunchy red pepper. And a sprinkle I think I said another thing I often will add if I have it is hummus. It's a really nice thing to add to this bowl as well. Just adds another really nice zing of flavor and more beans as well. So just a spoonful of hummus is really nice. I'm gonna add that over here. May as well eat them all since I'm the only one here. And I'm gonna add a little bit of avocado. Cutting that up. Scooping it out. If you do that, make sure you're not cutting through the skin and onto your hand. I've seen people do that. You sprig of avocado. And I'm going to add a little bit of fresh onion. Put up a tiny bit. It's going to be strong, so I don't want too much. I'll add a sprinkling of flax as well, but I don't have it right here, so I'll add that after. It's probably a tablespoon. Add that. It adds a nice little color. It's going to add a little zing as well. And there are nutrients that get when you cook. It's the same with cruciferous vegetables, and allium vegetables are the same when you cook them. There are certain things that become more available, but there are also enzymes that get destroyed through the cooking process. So it's really beneficial if you can add a little bit of fresh along with the cooked. And then the last thing I'm going to add is a little bit of my purple sauerkraut for my beautiful purple color. And look at that, my oatmeal is almost buried, but that is my gorgeous breakfast bowl, my savory oats. I made this for my father-in-law, who is not vegan, when he was visiting this summer, and he was very brave and tried it and gave me a good review for it. So that was good. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I will be back next week to talk about lunch and some more Veganuary tips that will hopefully be helpful to you along the way. If you have questions, things that you'd like me to talk about, I do have a list of questions that I'm going to be trying to integrate into the videos that people have sent my way in the last couple of months. So I'll be integrating those, but if you have any further questions, especially around the topic of transitioning or recipes that you'd love to get a hold of, please let me know in the comments. Send me an email through the form, submission form that I'll link to in the show notes. Subscribe to my newsletter for the recipes. I'll also post the recipes on my blog, but if you don't want to miss anything, if you get on my newsletter subscription list, that's a good way to do that. And then subscribe to the channel. I love hearing all your comments and your feedback. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you again soon.